so we did. We won 3rd place at a hackathon. And maybe the fun part about this was convincing a bunch of engineering bros that this art history document would be fun to engineer. So, we did it in a weekend. We got some ether as a prize. But we looked at the strictly legal dimensions of the document, like what can be enforced to the extent that you can put it into executable code. And are you all familiar with the Brzezinski? No. Okay. Can you go back to the website?
This is something that Rauschenberg started, I think, a long time ago, right? Or initiated then.
So Hans Haacke used it most famously. Adrian Piper also uses it. It was created in 1971 as an artist royalties contract. So it was designed to remedy some inequities in the art world, particularly artists' lack of control over the use of their work. So every time a work is resold, it's designed to give 15% of the value of a work of art back to the artist. And then it has additional clauses like the context of exhibition, the right to loans, reproduction rights. And it's written in plain language. And the original contract is a Xerox document. And you would cut out a notice in the contract and you would glue it to the back of the work. This is in the contract. Like, they recommend polyurethane. But it mirrors a blockchain. And so the question is, it's a question of what binds something to its value. And that was what Siglo wanted to do. He wanted to make the art world more economically democratic. But he also wanted to work with a legal term called privity, which is usually reserved for blood relationships, like inheritance. Like if somebody dies and like their next of kin inherits a lot of property, they would do so through privity. But you don't really need to understand like the blockchain to understand this project. Like if you understand postmodernism, you can understand the blockchain. Probably the blockchain is easier because you can do it in 2 minutes in a YouTube video versus like 2 years in grad school. But it works the same way. It works through like the idea of canon information. And so if a blockchain is just a storage infrastructure that is distributed across a network, Bitcoin works through absolute succession, which is why it takes so much computational power. Ethereum operates more like a matrix of accountability over a network through which transactions can be secured. So that would be called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous network organization. So it's sort of like the art world already, only formalized in code. So we were interested in working with historical network formation and what an alternative and ethical kind of provenance could look like. And so our web interface, you can tokenize a work of art. You can tokenize anything. You can tokenize any non-fungible form of property. Non-fungibility is a word for something that can't be reproduced. So yeah, there's a website called CryptoKitties, which is like a fun like post Neopets blockchain game where you can sort of generate these different kittens and then trade them as tokens. This contract can be used with any ERC-721 token that represents artwork or other assets. You could tokenize a fart, you could tokenize a painting, you could tokenize a relational aesthetics project, you could tokenize this, for example, and you can trade it. So where the project's at now, it's mostly like in UI and maybe about the community building around it. The problem that we ran into with this project was that most people like to buy and sell art anonymously. It's not art sales aren't necessarily something people want to do on a public chain. So this is an alternative way of looking at an art world network. Patrick is going to demo another project. If the Pajansky is a way to look at value formation in a network, this project is a library looking at the discursive aspect of art's value production.
All right. I'll stand back here for a little bit and then go up there once I get on the last slide. So the essential project that we've been working on is, stated in simplest possible terms, is keeping an ebook library of syllabi, specifically art world syllabi and the associated reading materials. And putting in the engineering challenge of this project has been making this library such that it can be a part of the commons infrastructure, or sort of be sealed into an object in the way that like a collection of books would have. Obviously, there's a lot of existent sites for sharing artwork or documents, or especially copyrighted documents. Like it's just, and one specific to the art world include arg.fail and which is the art. What's it again? Artists. What does it stand for? Do you remember?
Arg.org.
Arg.fail. Yeah.
Arg.fail. They just kept adding more and more A's to
Actors, artists. It keeps getting taken down, and every time it gets taken down, they add another A, so it becomes Arg.fail, and it's somewhat hard to. Every time that happens, you have to reinstall or figure out what the new URL is. So the idea here was build the same sort of thing, but the two improvements upon that sort of idea is one, it being a physical device that can be easily like stuck under a bathroom counter or like just put on any sort of public Wi-Fi, and it will reattach itself to the domain library. For now, it's library.pewterlab.io. And on this device, it's a very cheap device, like one that could be procured for like say less than $100, and storing both art world, I guess Sibboleths in the term like syllabi and Sibboleths. Sibboleths being the word, the biblical word for a phrase that's used to distinguish in a sort of like Pierre Bourdieu sense, like distinguish you as a member of the art world versus insider or outsider. So we've been collecting, for example, like the sort of starter pack of art world text for 2019. And this is obviously a pretty ongoing project, but the ideal would be to have all of the syllabi for like most MFA and BFA programs, and then the associated readings in this sort of physical device that isn't really owned by anybody. And the two devices that it's working, or the first device that it was attempted on is the classic Raspberry Pi server, which, can you hold it up, Victoria?
This is a $10 computer.
More than that, $30. But we realized, so this would obviously fit really easily in a bathroom or underneath a desk in
or one of New York's many privately owned public spaces.
Yeah. And it is set up so it will connect to this domain. Sort of, if it gets turned off, you just need to plug it back in again, and then it sort of will catch up to like copy over all the files and all the other ones, all the other, the many books or texts on here.
Sorry to interrupt.
But eventually realized that the Raspberry Pi, which is sort of like a popular art world tool. In fact, I went to like an opening earlier tonight that was, I think, driven by 2Pi. It's a kind of a nerd's toy. Found that wasn't really sufficient, but thankfully, as a part of all of our like startup shenanigans, Google had sent. Can you hold the laptop up? Had sent this free Chromebook. So it changes to run on this. It's part of their like Google Cloud program. They're giving these away, and so I figured you can just like fill out a form and talk to somebody from Google for 15 minutes, and they'll send you one. So that's the new like more powerful server for this project.
But you can also access this library publicly.
Yeah, yeah. both of those, in fact, are serving the same bugs with slightly different. They sync up essentially. They're just using a thing called Keybase, which encrypts all the files and stores them, and then distributes them to the respective devices. But the interesting thing, I don't know if I can really demonstrate this right now, but each of the different devices has its own like list of users and allows you to organize your own lists of shelves. So that the shelves on one device and the user list and like who's the administrator, so you can sort of theme the selection of syllabi and texts to the specific community's needs.
Like a book playlist.
Like a book playlist.
How do you get the Chromebook?
I'll send the link out later. Yeah,
Great.
it's a pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good little computer.
Another thing interesting about this library is that there's not really a digital platform that enables you to effectively run a discourse community. Like, I don't know if anybody's part of a reading group right now, or even a collective like this, but it's pretty hard outside of Gmail or outside of Instagram to store texts or to store reading lists, or like even like communicate in more than like a certain number of characters or like a length. So go up, Patrick, go up. We've been trying to create institutional syllabuses, but a lot of these syllabuses have belonged to experimental projects like the Bruce High Quality Foundation University, or Occupy working group structures that don't exist anymore. And when we think about the development of art history and all of the things that get lost in an environment where the only thing that is sustained is what can be exhibited. So we're interested in preserving things like performance documentation, or relational pieces, or conceptual work that might not have a platform for distribution. And this is from the Build Your Own University at the Bruce High Quality Foundation, maybe around 2015. We have one from the Yes Lab, which was done in 2011 alongside Occupy.
Fundamentally, I think the motivating factor behind this project is in working on these projects, wanting to educate themselves and finding that probably the two biggest barriers are hyper-financialization, hyper-academization, and I think that these two projects go after those two issues. The other one trying to make, I guess, the financial relationships in that world more transparent, and then this one is trying to make the art school curriculum transparent, because I think both have a strong ability to obscure the relationships and like the needed barriers to entry in both areas, which is something that I'm particularly concerned about as somebody who is more recently interested in art. I think the final thing to note about these two projects is both use like, I guess, are trying to balance like the how like technology can shape art practice or discourses, specifically just like web technology, and then not trying to just like force a project into being when it's not really the right tool for a job. I think that's something we've been trying to critique a lot throughout all these things. Like, does blockchain really help artists or the concerns of the art world, or is it really just people trying to make a startup work out of sort of different self-interested factors? Mm-hmm. And then with the syllabi project, I think that there's the idea that there's a lot of distrust or a lot of advice towards not going to art school, but what are the alternatives, and how much is it really that? I think it's pretty easy to believe that art school is not necessary if you've already been there. So I think that trying to move those resources into the commons so that either if you don't have the financial resources to go to art school, or if you've gone to art school and you want to continue your art practice without having to go back and get an MFA, how do you build a community of people and resources, sort of that studio, either like mentally or physically, especially if your studio is like your laptop,
Or your Raspberry Pi.
or your Raspberry Pi, or you know, just if you're at a coffee shop and you're just trying to scrape by, make your art practice scrape by. How do you build a practice that way? That's all.
So we thought we'd open up the floor to discussions or questions or even user research. I don't know how many people here are artists or how many people work in tech, or what your relationship to Instagram is, or if you don't use Facebook anymore, like what website template you use. Do you wanna? A user poll. We would probably make a survey for that, but yeah, if you wanna like, I don't know how you do these things.
And I think
It's
a
like
lot of us are involved in a lot of those things, so, you know, like, raise your hand if you're blah, blah, blah.
yeah. Should we like turn on the lights or something? I can get it.
Are you projecting?
Yeah, we're done. We're
Yeah.
done with all the material.
Okay,
We'll
we
go
can
for it.
turn the chairs, perpendicular,